town hall, all the issues that are part of that planning are being bypassed by making a decision to put this library in some location. So I just think it's a great opportunity to spend some time, and I know everybody's worked their butts off on this. I know all this, but I just think that this is an opportunity, and we might have to spend some money to really think about the total picture and what's going on. Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah. Can I do it from here?
No, you better do it from the microphone.
Okay.
Stay there, Bill. Bring it over. Mike, come to you, Bill.
There you go. Thank you, Smith. Thank you. My name is Bill Aubrey. I have lived in Atherton for 40 years. I've been associated with the Holbrook Palmer Park pretty much since the day we moved to town. That would have been in 1972 or 1973, early 73. I love this park. I really do love this park. And as Mr. Nielsen pointed out, we had one very special meeting in this room at which there was not an opportunity given to any of the speakers to answer questions. It was directed, as Mr. Nielsen points out, it was directed to 6 or 7 people who sat at the desk up here, and we were instructed to go to individuals and ask questions. It would take too much time to do it any other way. That was the thing that made up my mind very quickly, very clearly. We've got a situation here where we've got, it's kind of a blurred situation. We've got the library. Is the library a good idea? And then we've got, is the library in the park a good idea? I would hazard a guess that there isn't one person in this room that isn't in favor of a library, a new library for Atherton. I think there's probably, I could be wrong, but I don't think so, probably a very strong feeling that it should not be in Holbrook Palmer Park. And I don't know what's so magic about having the library moved to Holbrook Palmer Park. Why? I've been asking this question for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months, and I got my yellow light, but I haven't got a straight answer yet on why do we, if we're gonna have a new library, let's all agree that's great, but what is the library committee afraid of? By doing a survey, we stand a chance, a bigger chance of getting it right rather than screwing it up.
Are there any other public comments?
Jonathan Tiemann, McCormick Lane. I'm a relative newcomer. I've lived here maybe a little less than 15 years. But I would like to second one thing that the immediately previous commenter said in a slightly different way. There was one thing said tonight in on two different occasions in 2 different comments that I find extremely off-putting. When I'm told by the constituted powers that be, whether in business or in government, that the issue is complex and therefore I shouldn't worry my little head about what the complexities are, I can't decide whether to be insulted or suspicious. And that's my reaction to those comments tonight.
Are there any other public comments?
Good evening, David Barca. I live at 23 Below Avenue and have been there for 30 years, happily. and still happily. I don't really have a dog in this fight particularly. I have opinions, but I want to speak to two quick things. One is the comments made by Councilperson McKeithen in terms of the survey or not survey. I think those comments were cogent, but all were arguments that could go one way or another. And though I respect her thinking on that, I would say that there are plenty of good reasons to have a survey. And I'll give you the example of my own situation. I wasn't going to come up here and say anything, but the Little League situation has been mentioned more than once this evening. I happen to be a commissioner for Little League for over 12 years, and I served as president at the time of the survey in 4 years preceding. And I have to say that for the 12 years I was on the commission, we approached the town of Atherton each of those 12 years for some recognition of the needs of our children to play Little League baseball on the Holbrook Palmer field. And 11 of those 12 years we were turned down, and on the 12th year we were given the right of a survey. And I, speaking for the Little League, am most proud that the council people at that time were acquiesced to doing that. So I speak in favor of a survey if it's done properly.
Are there any other public comments?
Rachel Croft, 45-year resident of the town and a former Park and Rec Commissioner for 8 years in the 1980s. And I have to say that the propositions that the Park and Rec made to the council were really taken seriously by the council, and I think we always managed to get our way. And in two situations, to me, the most important ones were that we denied 2 different buildings which were considered to be built in the park. And one of them was the Atherton Anderson Art Collection, which now is up on Sand Hill Road. And we did not want it in the park because we didn't want another building in the park. And the second one was a bonsai collection. And people did not want to have it. I think they were worried that there'd be big buses coming into the park and ruining the ambiance of our park. So I think I'd rather have a real election where people actually vote, so there wouldn't be a slanted survey if that's what people are worried about having. So that's my opinion, and thank you.
Are there any other public comments?
Sherry Shank, I live on Virginia Lane. I moved to Atherton when I was 12 years old, and I won't tell you how old I am, but that's, we're getting up close to 60 years in and out of the town. Most recently, 30 years in the same house. I am a former member, or I'm not even a member, I'm a former president, or yeah, Friends of the Atherton Library in the 80s, late 80s. My dad was a huge fan of the park and the library, staunchest supporter of the library when he was the mayor, and I still see things that remind me of him when I'm there. What I would like to say is this feels a little bit like Solyndra. I received a survey about the library several years ago before this effort was made, and I can remember questions, something to the effect, do you believe the library should be improved? Do you believe we need XYZ for the library? I voted yes on everything. Everything, because I'm in love with libraries, and I know our library needs improvement and expansion. The first meeting I went to regarding the new library plan was over at Holbrook Palmer Park, and I saw the drawings and I heard the size of the library being proposed, and my heart just went, oh my gosh, do we really want this in the middle of the park, and do we really need something in this small community that is so large? Now that's up for opinion, you know, my opinion is no, others is yes. But what I'm feeling like is what someone said yesterday at the publicly televised coverage of the meeting in Palo Alto that took place for high-speed rail. And there was a huge sentiment that was, yes, I voted for this. If I'd known exactly what it was going to look like, and B, I would not have, and I'd like to vote again, please. And I'd like to vote again. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? John?
John Ruggiero, Stockbridge Avenue. What we realize, I don't know if everybody realizes, there are three different groups regarding this library. There's the people that want it in the park, there's the people that want it in a town complex, in the town complex area. There's people that just don't want it in the complex or in the park, they want it where it is. Now, this represents a large amount of the people. 40% of you people voted against a survey and so on. Now, several people asked me to come here and speak to their names. They're on the group that just don't want the library in the park, period. And they're very well known to you. There's Bob Franceschini, who's been involved in local politics many, many years. Charles Ramarito, former president of the ACIL, etc. Phil Lively, former president of Lindenwood Homeowners Association. They can't be here, but I've discussed this with them. Jean Schaff, member of the Transportation Committee, very active young lady in Atherton politics. Jan Simons, another lady, many other people. Myself, I'm sort of brokenhearted going against a lot of the people on the council that I like very much. But we need a survey. It's so obvious that we need a survey. If 100% of you people were for it, it might be a different issue. But you're split yourselves. In this room right now, if you ask the question, raise your hand, who wants a survey here? There's a good example of a survey that didn't cost us anything. But,
Didn't ask who doesn't want one, though.
but anyway, those are the people asked me to speak for them, and I'm speaking for myself.
I would like to close the public comments soon. So if anybody else, see if we can make this the last one.
I'd like to make one quick comment. I'm looking forward to reading the big binder that Denise has pointed out to me, but I'd like to ask if at any time the library committee actually asked any group of people, sizable group, perhaps more than 35, how they feel about putting the library in the park or not. I don't think they've actually done that and taken a real tally. There's a lot of comments, there's been a lot of questions, there's probably a big binder, but I looked at the library website, there was no question asked with data representing the answer. The other point I'd like to finish with is to say that it is my perception, maybe I'm wrong in this, but it's my perception that the job of council members on a council is to represent a town. We are all entitled to our opinions, and I respect everybody's opinion about how they feel about libraries, where they like libraries, where they like to read books, whether they like to read iPads or not. But it is the council's job to make sure, without any doubt, that the committee that they have authorized has done the job that they were authorized to do, and not just to decide on behalf of the people who should have been surveyed, not to decide for them. It is your job to decide if that committee has done the right job. And that is really what you need to be deciding. Because if they haven't, then you should reasonably, as representatives of the whole town, make sure that the voices of the citizens in this town have been heard. Thank you.
Walter Sleeth, and I apologize for speaking again.
That's all.
I think we have not looked at the elephant in the room. I'm sure the steering committee looked at the issue. Mr. Greg Conlon mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. What are we going to do about high-speed rail? Even when I go over to the library right now without high-speed rail, it seems like every 5 or 10 minutes there's a train ripping through. The library, that's not the right place for a library. Now, if any of you can come up with what other property does the town have that we can put the library in, I'd love to hear it. Nobody seems to be saying that. What I think is, now wasn't on the steering committee, but I'm sure that the steering committee looked at all those issues, and that's why they recommended just a preferred site. So that's where we are now. I think we should let our elected representatives go the way they have. Thank you very much.
I'm going to close the public comments now and bring this back to the council. No,
Okay, I just have one thing. I would, this council, this town has decided in the past that it is better to have this park as a place for weddings and corporate meetings than holding what is considered one of the world's finest collections of modern art. So my hope is that perhaps our decisions will include a broader vision going forward. Thank you.
thank you, and the public comment session is now closed. I'll bring this back to the council for any further comments.
Yes. One, I didn't say the people of Atherton weren't smart. I didn't say that people of Atherton shouldn't worry their pretty little heads about this. I simply said that there were very complex issues, and it would be very difficult if you don't read a 27-page report and don't regularly attend our meetings for you to be able to truly understand what is at stake here. That is not demeaning your intelligence. I beg to differ. Valerie, you say that you hope that the committee has done the job it was authorized to do. I think I'm going to be blunt and say I find that rather ironic coming from you, given what's happened with the Environmental Programs Committee and how it has truly exceeded its charter. But yes, I feel absolutely comfortable with what the steering committee has done. And sir, the steering committee does not have Ginny Nile, and it also has Marion Oster, and does not have Joan Sanders as alternates. They are members and has other members as well. Your data is out of date. With regard to some of the things you mentioned, Charles, a lot of those arenas and things involve new bond measures and taxes, and there's a good reason why they had to go to the electorate by law. With regard to the committee membership, I'm not here to honor members of any committee or honor members of the council or honor myself in any way. And I stick by my words, Elizabeth. If at some point, up to and including the day that the shovel goes in the ground, it should be found that whatever the site is, including if the site should be deemed to be the preferred site, that it is not the best site for some reason. I would argue that we abandon it and look elsewhere. But we have not allowed the process to go forward. It has constantly been delayed, and people have constantly tried to find methodologies for delaying it. The EIR process is the method by which the community, for months, will have an opportunity for input, written, oral, by law, and you will have your comments responded to in writing, in a report. It's what you all wanted, it's what we're going to do, it's what's costing us a lot of money. With regard to the membership of the Park and Rec and honoring them, it is my understanding that one of the 4 members didn't even receive the materials about the library, therefore didn't even read them when he voted on it. Another member did not look at the materials that were received. So we had 3 members who might have looked at the materials and voted on this matter. That is not necessarily something I want to rely upon. Moreover, one of the members clearly made a procedural error by combining 2 items on the agenda that was not something you should do under the Brown Act. And so it's questionable whether or not the process was even followed. If this is, someone said that with regard to, she attended one meeting, and that or a number of people said they attended a community meeting in this room and that they were not allowed to speak. Well, there were a lot of other meetings at which you have been allowed to speak. At every single meeting we have held, people have been allowed to speak, and we have invited people to speak. At all the emails we sent out, and there have been at least 3, and we sent them out to more than 1,200 members of the Atherton community who chose to sign up for emails, and that's the only email list we are allowed to use, not the Athertonian list, which is a rogue list that has been created through the EPC, through membership of the EPC, through signups in the 2020 program, through various other methods. We used the legal, legitimate town list, and in that list said, if you can't attend a meeting, if you can't attend any of our meetings, if you cannot attend a community meeting, we are here for you. We will answer any questions you have, morning, noon, day, and night, essentially. We will meet with you as individuals. We will meet with you as community groups. We will meet with you at any time, given the fact that some of these meetings are held during vacation time. What more do you want us to do as far as making ourselves available for meeting with you? We have sent out emails to everybody we possibly could and knew and was legitimate. With regard to your comment, Bill, you haven't heard anybody state why they want the library in the park.
Right.
Well, I'll be happy to tell you why. There's environmental reasons. Even with the door open, you can still talk, you can't there. You can have solar here, you can't over at the other building. You don't have vibration possibilities or the prospect of a high-speed rail, let alone bullet trains that are, what, 90 we have going by? You don't have a 90 miles an hour. You have a synergy with other activities that you're not going to have. One synergy with another activity I heard of was with the post office, which costs us $40,000 a year, is used by almost as many Menlo Park residents, 9 as compared to the 10 Atherton residents on a daily basis. That's a big number to be costing us $40,000, and that was a year ago, so no doubt it's gone up in cost. You have a play school, you have sports, you have walking, and the main house. What is the main house presently being used for? Atherton Dame storage, park and rec meetings, a couple of offices, and weddings. What else? We have weddings and other events. What do? They lose money. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that we are basically subsidizing in this town. Do we need that? The library is seismically unsafe, the existing library. It would cost at least $40,000. It has an entire second floor, including a bathtub up there, which they can never use for baths, which is a waste. They have to heat and maintain the entire second floor, and it can be used for virtually nothing else. There's one office up there. What is the point of having a 2-story building where you can't even use the second floor? You cannot put solar in. It would not be environmentally a very good choice. And if you were to expand it, and it's a possible historic site, which would have to undergo an EIR review in itself, if you were to expand it, it would likely encroach on that beautiful park next door, if not eliminate the entire park by the time you figure out the additional size of the building and then put in the necessary parking. I could go on, Bill, but that's why. And when I ask people why they are so against the park being the site for the library, you know what? To a person, they tell me they don't want to talk about it. They don't want it in the park.
Jim? Jim, she's...
No, the public comments are
She signaled me out, so I get to...
No, I responded to everybody, and I'd be happy to speak with you.
Public comments are finished, I'm sorry.
All right, sir.
Bill, Jerry?
Well, I heard a lot of comments, but I still think that the idea of letting everyone in town have an opportunity to make their voice heard on this very important subject is the right way to go. I think a lot of extraneous comments were made tonight. What's gone on in the past is past. And it's, to me, kind of a waste of time at this point to dwell on whether processes were adequate or inadequate or whatever. We are where we are, and the fact of the matter is we have a divided town. We're hearing strong comments from those that want to have a library in the park and those that do not. And I really reject the idea that Atherton residents couldn't go ahead and voice their opinion on this without sitting down and going through a long education of all the fine points the steering committee's gone through. I actually heard the first time tonight that there is this binder that has these comments. This is the first time that that's been commented on that I've heard, or at least maybe it may have been said in the past, but it sure went over my head. And I'm looking forward to going through that binder and seeing what some of those comments were, because I was at one of the meetings, one of the breakout sessions, and comments were being made about alternative sites in the town center area, not the present library site, but alternative sites in the town center area that had some possibilities that ought to be thought about and ought to be looked at as well. It's true that the EIR process is supposed to look at those kinds of things, and it may give residents an opportunity to weigh in at that point in time. I really think that we would be well served to try and get an idea of what the silent majority really thinks, rather than making some comments that we think that we're speaking on their behalf when we really don't know. I think the will of the majority on this particular thing is very, very important. I think it could be a healing type thing, as I've said 2 or 3 times before. And I think that's really what the community wants, is an opportunity to be engaged in the process in a way that we can all come together and say, okay, we were part of it, now let's get on with it, and let's take pride in whatever that is and get behind it.
Elizabeth,
I think that the fact that you hear the frustration tonight of people is a good indication that a 3-2 vote in deciding this matter is not the proper way to go.
I'm not going to take a lot of time, 10 to 15 minutes, to go on and on about things, but just to respond one quick thing to Councilmember McKeithen's speech about all the things that are against incorporating the library in a new library in the town center area. I'm not necessarily for or against that. I just think that all the solar issues, the noise issues, that can be mitigated with new construction. So all those details can be solved, can be changed. What we need to solve here now is the fact that we have a split council, and we need to be a unanimous council on this. The only way that we're going to be unanimous on a project this size is by going to the public for a vote. The town center is going to be built by public donations. The town center, the government operations, does not have $5.6 million in the bank of your tax money that has been accumulated over the years for the library donor city funds. We are very blessed in Atherton to have that amount of money to build a new library. Let's just do it right. Let's let the people help us make the right decision. It's not just up to the 3-2 vote. We really need to do the survey. And I'd like to make a motion that we accept Park and Rec's recommendation to conduct a townwide resident survey about whether or not the library in the park is a good decision to make.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed?
I'll abstain.
That's a 2-2 vote. The motion fails.
The motion is not. So we'll now go to item number 19, which is Atherton Library Building Project. Amendment to LSA Association Correctional Services
Thank you. Good evening. The City Council at its October meeting selected the Public Park as the preferred site for the new library, and that recommendation is subject to meeting the CEQA requirements. Staff in the Library Steering Committee recommends preparation of a full environmental impact report to satisfy the CEQA requirements. In April, the City Council selected LSA, a consulting firm, to prepare the environmental review document for the library. At the request of staff, LSA has prepared a work plan for the preparation of an EIR. The additional cost for the EIR is $86,000. The contract that was awarded was in the amount of $69,000. And with the amendment, the total authorization would come to just over $155,000. And the cost of this work is paid from the library fund. The preparation of the EIR is an approximately 7-month time frame. I'd be happy to try to answer any of your questions. We've also asked LSA staff to be present this evening if you have any questions on the proposal.
Are there any comments from the council?
No, it looks like the time schedule that you've got is fairly packed. Every week there's something going on. So you really run that out at the realistic schedule, and you body that schedule with getting all the notifications out and everything?
We believe we can keep to the schedule. Of course, there's some meetings in there that are public hearings, and if those bodies choose to continue them and have a second meeting, that could then delay the schedule. But other than that, we believe we can meet that schedule.
Other council comments? Any public comments?
Charles Marsala, 33 Emily. I did want to, Kathy, when I heard your comments, it seems like the EIR is really done. That because of the train noise and everything else that's over there, that this is the only place to put the library. So we're spending this $150,000 when, to me, the conclusion seems to be pretty obvious that this is the better spot. The thing that, I know you said, no one has said why are they opposed to it, but I know the opposition could be simply because of green space. You know, if we don't use the house, we could have more green space. And as someone who has voted and supported POST, the Peninsula Open Trust, Open Lands area, that is something that we should respect those people in town who feel that open space is a priority as opposed to building a library that, and I don't know the numbers, but they're there. How many people in Atherton really want it? And it seems only about, in the surveys, that about 70% of the people in Atherton want a bigger library, and that it's being built to serve Fair Oaks and other parts of unincorporated San Mateo County. And those are some of the things that should be vetted out before we even need to spend this $150,000. Maybe we could use it for something else for the library.
Charles, I want you to stick to the subject here.
I am.
We're not talking any longer about the survey. We're talking about the recommendation to proceed
spend
preparation
$150,000.
environmental impact for it.
And Jim, my point is that before we spend the $150,000, we should find out if the residents really want it.
Charles, we've already crossed that bridge, and I don't think that that's appropriate to talk.
Well, I think that spending $150,000 for an EIR when it's pretty obvious is something you could use it for other means. And if, as someone who had wanted an art center here in the park at one time, as I listened to the things, if the residents, and we're going to do this input, which we talked about is what the EIR is supposed to do, is get the resident input, you're going to find out that perhaps you should have done that first before you spend $150,000. You can spend it on something else.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I have a comment. I have a comment. Yeah, we got to bring it back to the council. I am also concerned about spending money, the $155,000, just because it's there in the library fund. The Library Donor Cities Fund is a big blessing, like I said before, to our town to use on a new library. And while it may seem like we've got a lot of money, we, not the Library Task Force, but we, the town of Atherton Library Fund has $5.6 million that has accumulated over the years of your tax money because our library didn't use it all, but we have 5.6 million, and it's growing at $750,000 a year. Well, that seems like a lot of money. Once you start spending it on EIRs and on planning, which they've already started doing, it's going to be gone. I believe that the overall budget for the proposed library exceeds the amount of money that we have. So that needs to be considered. I don't want to stop the process. I just want to be conservative, fiscally conservative in the process. What would be the harm in conducting the town-wide survey before spending the additional $80,000 on the EIR at this time? A survey would take a relatively short period of time, and the EIR is going to take up to almost a year. And then you start spending money, and it'll go quickly. I just want to be more certain, really certain, about what the Atherton residents want before spending money.
Okay.
Yes, I have a number of concerns in terms of the report that we were given in terms of the scope of the project. One of my first concerns is the December meeting date to talk about scoping of the project. With Thanksgiving holidays coming up and throughout the rest of the year, it becomes very problematic as far as how many people are going to be available to show up at that kind of a meeting. So I would urge you to consider holding that meeting in January rather than in December. One of the interesting questions I have in terms of the environmental process and what they're going to look at is what size of library. There are all kinds of numbers that